Hi folks, and welcome back to my World of Tanks replays with the mighty Jingles. We're back on the patch test server and we're in the garage with the IS-4. I've been asked to take a look at the IS-4 and see how it performs with the various changes on the test server. IS-4's got a slightly different model. For those of you who know and love the IS-4 on live, you can see that there's a couple of changes here. It's had some fuel canisters stuck on the back. The front has changed. I'm not entirely sure what the reason for the change was, but as I understand it, the existing IS-4 model in the game isn't really the IS-4's model. This is what the IS-4 actually looked like. As far as the game model is concerned, there are a couple of changes. This, what used to be the driver's view hatch, is now a solid plug of armour with a little periscope mounted on the top. So that is no longer a weak spot. Other than that, there don't seem to be any significant changes. It's had a machine gun mounted at the top, which is nice. But the major change affecting the IS-4 in patch 8 isn't anything that really directly is specific to this tank. It's the normalization change for sloped armour. And as you can see, the IS-4 is pretty much nothing but sloped armour. However, and I really cannot explain this, my games in this thing on the test server have been nothing but utter garbage. This tank has been getting penetrated from every angle imaginable. And I think it's down to, well, it could just be that tonight was the night that everybody decided to start using gold ammunition. It's unlikely, but that might be the case. So just keep that in the back of your mind as I'm talking through this. But here's the thing about the IS-4. And I do feel vaguely cheated. Because, let's have a look at the tech tree. Okay, you've got two Russian heavy tank lines. So you've got the KV-1S, IS, IS-3, IS-8 and IS-7. And these are the faster but less heavily armoured of the Russian heavy tanks. And then you've got the T-150, KV-3, KV-4, STI and the IS-4. And these guys are apparently the more heavily armoured but slower of the Russian heavy tanks. And that's certainly true of the T-150, the KV-3, the KV-4, the STI. But then you get to the IS-4 and what? Slower, but more heavily armoured than the IS-7. Oh, really? Well, it's certainly slower. IS-7 could do 50 kph. The IS-4 is still pretty fast for a heavy tank, but it is slower. 43 kph top speed. More heavily armoured, is it? Is that a fact? The IS-7 has 10mm more armour thickness at the front than the IS-4. The IS-4 has 10mm more at the side, and it has more armour at the rear. So this is more heavily armoured than the IS-7, is it? And there's not an awful lot in the turret either. I mean, 250 versus 240, 200 versus 185. The rear of the turret of the IS-4 is better, 170, but 170 may as well be 94 with the penetration of the guns that are going to be shooting at this thing, if they can get a shot into the back of your turret. So, well, is it really more heavily armoured than the IS-7? I mean, it's certainly slower, but is it more heavily armoured? Well, let's just look at the armour profile. Alright, that's, I mean, it is certainly sloped. And don't forget, sloped armour is going to be more effective in patch 8. But look at the angle of the front of the hull. And that's 140mm thick. Compared to the IS-7. And that's 150mm thick. And it's better sloping and better angling. And it's much better sloping and much better angling. And it's got the pike nose. So that means that as long as the IS-7 is pointing straight at you, both of these sides receive exactly the same angling bonus. Look at the IS-4. This is where I have problems. because if you keep the front of the tank pointing straight towards the enemy, you're going to get your lower glacis shot to shit. If you try to angle your lower glacis to give it some sort of protection, you're going to get the collar of the tank here shot to shit. If you try to angle it the other way, you're going to get the collar of the tank here shot to shit. And if you can cover up your lower glacis, they're just going to put shot after shot through the front of your upper glacis. The turret is very, very good. Credit where credit's due, the turret is incredibly tough. But the hull isn't. And the faster and less heavily armoured Russian heavy tank, well, it certainly is faster, but there is no way this thing has less armour from the front. The front of the hull here is practically an auto bounce zone. The only reliable way to get through the collars or the cheeks of the frontal armour are if the tank is angled. And the lower glacis is surprisingly bouncy too. You don't get any of that on the IS-4 because it's not as steeply angled and it's all flat, and no matter which way you angle and turn this tank, there is always a best place to shoot at it. If it's angled that way, shoot him here. If he's angled that way, shoot him here. If he's pointing straight on, shoot him here. If that's covered up and he's pointing straight on, shoot him anywhere but there. And the shots will go through. So, yeah, it's certainly slower than the IS-7. But armour? I'd rather be in an IS-7. Every single game I have played in this tank on the test server has been utter garbage. And I'll show you what I mean. So here's the IS-4, and this game was recorded before the second version of the patch 8 test was published. Ooh, nearly drove into the arse of an AMX-50B there. And essentially all I'm doing here is I just wanted to see how the IS-4's frontal armour performed with the normalisation changes and the buff to sloped armour. So don't pay too much attention to the tactics involved here. And what happens here is I come up against a mouse and a T-54, but not too concerned about the T-54. So there's the mouse, and this was really disheartening. You'll see what I mean. So I'm pulling the camera back here so you can just see what happens.
We didn't penetrate their armor.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I can't get through the turret armor of the mouse. Okay, here we go. Now remember, the mouse has the E-75's gun.
Enemy is hit.
So there we go. I penetrate him, he penetrates me. And if you face him directly, he's just going to put shots through you.
That's gotta hurt.
Shot after shot after shot through your lower plate.
Enemy armor is hit.
Now, here's the problem. That one went right through my upper glacis, where the hull armour is the toughest. And that's the E-75's gun. Now here's the problem that you have with that sloped armour at the front of the IS-4. Is that when you come up against a tall tank, like the Mouse, like the E-75, like any of the Germans basically, and some of the Americans, because their guns are so much higher up from the ground, at close ranges, they're either going to put shots through your gun, well, at mid-range they're going to put shots through your lower glacis, like those first two hits there. If you're close to a range where the angle becomes too steep for them to reliably penetrate the lower glacis, well, all you've done is you've just made it easier for them to penetrate your upper glacis, because guns that are shooting down negate the effect of all that sloping. And he has not failed to penetrate me with every single shot he's taken.
We've lost the track.
Okay, T-54 blows my tracks off. And there's a bounce. Now that was the mouse trying to shoot here from above that will penetrate the top of your turret every time if you're at face hug range. And I daren't turn my turret to the side to deal with this T-54, otherwise you're just going to put shots through the side of the turret and the rear of the turret. So, you know, I'm doomed here, but the whole purpose of this exercise was just to test the armour of the IS-4.
Track hit. Track repair. Drive on. Nice shot.
Now, at this sort of range, all you can reliably do against a mouse is aim for these little periscopes here, these little viewports, because there's pretty much nothing else you can penetrate from this angle.
We've lost the track. We nailed.
That shot there from the T-54 went right into the spaced armour. Worst possible place he could attempt to shoot us. No, he's got the new gun on the T-54.
We've fixed the track. Let's roll.
And now watch this. He's going to shoot right through my gun mantle.
We've had it. Let's get out of here.
Now it turns out that killing blow, which went right through the toughest part of the armour on this tank, right through the gun mantle, it turns out that in this first version of the test patch, they changed the model of the IS-4, and you can always rely on wargaming to screw something up when they introduce something new into the game. And it turned out that they forgot to actually add an armour value for the gun mantle. Yeah, so basically there's a gaping hole in the front of the tank, which was fun. But if nothing else, that perfectly illustrated the limitations of this so-called most heavily armoured Russian heavy tank. Because at medium to long range, all they're going to do is put shot after shot through your lower glacis. If you close to a range where the angle of fire at the lower glacis becomes impractical, well, you've just closed to the range where the angle of fire at your upper glacis suddenly becomes very favourable. So you're in a lose-lose situation with this tank if you're coming up against tier 9 or 10s. And of course you're going to come up against tier 9s or 10s because you're in a tier 10 tank, and those are the battles that this thing faces. And as I showed you in the garage, if you try to angle this thing, well, they're just going to put shot after shot through the side cheeks here or there. Now the IS-7 does not have this problem. You just keep the front of the tank pointing towards the enemy and you're as good as gold. Shots that hit the upper glacis are going to bounce up, but they're going to bounce every time. The gun mantle is just as well armoured. The front of the tank is even more sloped and rounded than this thing is, and even more bouncy. And while the lower glacis is a bigger target, get close enough, and these high mounted guns on German heavies just don't have the angle to hit them accurately. And so the alleged fact that this is the most heavily armoured Russian heavy tank is just, it's a total fabrication. It doesn't even have the armour thickness on paper at the front of the IS-7. And the IS-7 is much, much better sloped and angled, and so will become correspondingly much, much harder to penetrate in patch 8 than the IS-4 has a hope of being. But bear in mind, this was all taken on the first iteration of the test patch, and things changed slightly in the second version of the test patch. So after the second version of the test patch came out, and they actually fixed the glaring armour weaknesses in the front of this tank, I thought, well, I'll give it another go, see if things have improved. And you'll be happy to hear that they have. This isn't nearly as weak a tier 10 heavy tank as it was in the first version of the test patch. So this game was, and check out the new maps, much more higher detail, very nice. This is Encounter on Sand River, and look how close the teams start to each other.
Time to roll out.
So an ideal position in which to test the new armour configuration of the IS-4. You don't have to go very far. Just head up to these trees up here and the rocks just in the middle of the dunes, and you will find enemy tanks aplenty shooting at you. So let's see how we do. And again, I'm going to pull to an external camera view here just so you can see where the shots hit. Here they come. And there's our first bounce. And where did that one go? It's hard to tell with all this dust. Can't really see. Oh, there you go. There you go. There's the proof of the pudding. That one clipped the side of the gun mantle and bounced right off. Don't know if you can see it there. There it is. Now, if that had been the first version of the test patch, that AMX-50 Foch 155 would have taken a third of my health off, because that would have been a no armour zone. It would have gone right through. Probably wrecked the gun, killed the commander, done all sorts of damage. It seems to be working now. And there's another bounce. Where did that one go? Again, lots and lots of dust here. Really hard to tell where these shots are hitting. Can't really say for sure. Anyway, oh, that one looks like... There you go. Bottom of the gun mantle. Good. Very reassuring. It's actually working now. If I'd done this 2 days ago, I would have been on about 300 health by now. Oh, that one actually looks like it bounced off the turret ring. Hit the cheek, went down, bounced off the turret ring.
Penetration. Looks like that one went
That T-62A seems to have a death wish. As you can see, the gun mantle of the Foch is just as hard as it ever was to penetrate. Missed his machine gun turret there, which is a shame, because that would have been a perfect shot against that Jagdpanzer E-100. And here comes an M48, and he gets tracked, and of course I missed the shot because he swerves just as he comes in.
Enemy vehicle destroyed.
There we go, killed the Jagdpanzer E-100. Okay, now at this point, I daren't turn to angle against this M48 because I just can't do it with what's in front of me. So I am going to take a couple of hits in the side here from this pattern. And it's equally risky having to turn my turret to the side because that's a nice juicy target for the tanks in front of me as well. But I cannot not kill this guy. I just don't want to turn the whole tank to do it.
Looks like that one went right through.
This is a dodgy situation, and there we go. He fired, he hit me, and this time it bounced off the upper glacis. Despite the fact that the rear of the tank is higher off the ground than the front of the tank, which is basically flattening the angle of the upper glacis and increasing the angling of the lower glacis. So it's kind of hard to tell there. That could have been a bounce off. I mean, you can see where it went. There. I mean, is that a lower glacis hit or an upper glacis hit? Really not sure. I suspect that was a lower glacis hit, but because I'm angling, because I'm tilting the tank forward, it's making the angle of the lower glacis better, and therefore the lower glacis suddenly becomes the worst place to take the shot, and the upper glacis becomes more vulnerable. And it looks like he went for the lower glacis, and the armour just took the hit.
They're knocked out.
Okay, somehow that Jagdpanzer E-100 is still alive. And I've only taken one damaging hit. So I'm going to go ahead of this Jagdpanzer. I want to keep him alive. Look at where he's been penetrated. Lower glacis, every time. Okay, I'm going to blow this guy's tracks off. There you go. And now he's totally vulnerable. 800 health. Oh! Okay, lower glacis shot it is. That was a low damage roll for that. for our Jagdpanzer. He should have one-shot killed him. But shit happens. Now, observe at this point how much artillery is in the game. There we go. So I've been hit by one GW Type E. I don't want to get hit by the other one or the Object 261, so I use my repair kit to get my tracks going and keep moving, and they hit me again anyway. Look at that. Jagdpanzer E100 there on 32 health, but no, they would rather shoot at me than remove one of the most dangerous guns in the game from the field of play. Artie loves me. So that's 2 big hits from artillery we've taken. Other than that, only one shot from regular tank guns has actually penetrated our armour, and that was a flank shot from an M48, which was always going to penetrate. But here you go, remember? I'm not allowed to kill artillery. Oh, God. Well, that's not strictly true. I'm allowed to kill artillery when I'm driving French tanks. Well, I'm not. No, I'm not allowed to kill artillery even when I'm driving French tanks. But the French don't give a shit. If you want to get a Frenchman to do something, tell him he's not allowed to. And watch how quickly he does it. So I'm fine killing artillery in my French tanks. God, where is that guy? GW Type E down. Oh, check that out. Sneaky bugger. That is a really, really good idea. Okay, I'll pause it there. Look at where that GW Type E was hiding. Down in the wadi, in the river, in the river gully. Of course, you can get down there now with the physics patch, and it's a fantastic spot for artillery. Clever, clever boy. Well, anyway, getting sidetracked. This was all about the IS-3. Not the IS-3, the IS-4. And yeah, that makes me feel a lot more confident. Certainly, I mean, look at the bounces. Check it out. Bounce, bounce, bounce. One penetrating hit in the flank from the M48. Can't see where it went through. Possibly under the tracks. Don't know. But very reassuring. And the only serious damage that we took in that game was, as usual, from artillery. So yeah, much happier with the IS-4's performance. Previous matches that I'd played, particularly me facing off on Himmelsdorf against that mouse, I mean, it was just really frustrating. It was not performing like the IS-4 we all know and love. But in that game, which was the first game I played on the IS-4, on the second build of the test patch, with the fixes to the IS-4's armour, it was very reassuring. That's much more like the IS-4 I've come to know and love. And if we have a look, there we go, hits received 5. A couple of artillery hits, because, you know, it wouldn't be one of my replays if I wasn't getting hammered by artillery. But yeah, we got some good bounces. And of course, that M48 managed to pump a shot into our flank, and it penetrated, and no surprise there. But you know, I had bigger problems to my front, and I wasn't that worried about that 48 with with 3 of us pinning him in place and killing him very, very quickly. I was prepared to take the hits in the side. So yeah, penetrating hit from a pattern to be expected. Some very, very good bounces from the front, from a whole bunch of tier 10 guns shooting at us. That's more like the IS-4 we all know and love. So I'm feeling and its future in patch 8. It's looking pretty good, just as good as it always was. And of course, with the changes to shell normalization, sloped armor being better than before, it's going to be even bouncier than it was, and that certainly appears to be the case. So yeah, quite happy with the IS-4. It is performing more as I have expected it to. So that was a quick summary of some of the changes in the second version of the test patch, and a couple of quick games, one before the latest build and one after the latest build, in the IS-4. Hope you enjoyed the replays. Take care on the battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.